Let me know when you're ready to begin.
Okay, I will, since it's 12:15, I will go ahead and introduce you. Thank you, everybody, for coming back after lunch. I know it's tempting to lay down instead. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate Lori being here. She came to our attention. She's the McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Coordinator and Foster Care Person of Contact for Covington Independent School District. And our Program Improvement Specialist, Angie Austin, visited our program there and said the collaboration happening between the district and the program was fantastic, and that Lori was offering all these resources that were really helpful to the kids in that program. So we wanted to share how that might work. So thank you for joining us, and I will turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to introduce a little bit about what I do. I am the foster care and homeless liaison for Covington Independent Public Schools. I've been in the district since 2004, and I took over this position in 2008 and ended last school year with over 700 students in homeless and over 89 in foster care. And I'll get into more of that later. But I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about what it means when we talk about the McKinney-Vento homeless definition, for those of you that may not have experienced or have had any familiarity with McKinney-Vento. It came into existence in 1987, and in 2016, they also did some updates on foster care. But when we're talking about students that are under the McKinney-Vento definition, we're talking about students that are coming to school with some additional baggage that is not similar to what other students are coming from. So I like to use this when I'm talking in trainings with our staff, just to show that some of the things that the kids might be dealing with as they walk into the building. So when you're looking at McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, it is a federal law that addresses the educational needs of children and youth that are experiencing homelessness. So my point of being a liaison is to make sure that while a child is enrolled and identified as McKinney-Vento, that we are removing barriers so that they can have academic stability. It is an academic law. And what it does is it provides them some additional educational rights to stay in school of origin, as well as it gives them access to everything that a mainstream student would have. But in addition, we also provide transportation if needed, if they're living outside of our district's area once identified. And the whole thing is that we are finding that children and youth who are identified in this situation, who are living in various different definitions within this law, that we are finding that if they move schools academically, they fall behind 4 to 6 months every year. They change schools, and on average, most kids change schools 7 to 8 times a year. So over their academic career, they could be behind 2 to 3 years. And lots of times, it's if we can keep their academics stable, we can overcome some of these additional barriers. In addition, even though there is some schools that receive the grant and some that do not, it's a 3-year grant that you apply for to get some additional supports financially for these kiddos. All schools that are public schools have to have someone identified within their district to handle the homeless population. So they may not use the same name when you write your grant. In our district, it was called Project Home, which I inherited back when I took over this position. But we are trying to get away from that name so that when the kids switch schools, that they can know it by the McKinney-Vento, which is the actual name of the law. So that could vary with every district what it's called. So when you're looking at McKinney-Vento, it means that they're lacking fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime assistance residence. And this could be either doubled up with friends or relatives. They could be living in shelters. They could be living in hotels, transitional housing, uninhabitable places, and of course our unaccompanied youth that we have that are in our runaway shelter that's in our district, and our migrant children. And we also include undocumented children as well. I will stop throughout to see if there's any questions, but especially at the end. So feel free if you have any to put it in the chat, and Katie will let me know if there's a question out there while I'm sharing my screen. So some of the myths, lots of times I hear people say, well, why don't they just get a job? Well, they oftentimes are the working poor. They might have a job, they just are not able to make ends meet because of the fact that they have lost their housing due to whether it be fleeing a domestic violence situation, maybe a spouse was incarcerated, so they had to go home and live doubled up with a relative of some sort. It could be due to illness, a medical condition, substance abuse. But the biggest thing we are noticing in our areas too, it's just lack of affordable housing in Covington. So in Covington right now, housing is very bleak. And if you were to rent a house in Covington, one of our families would have to make at least over $22 an hour to have a 1-bedroom apartment that could rent up to $1,800 a month. However, in one of our local suburban districts where it's considered more of a white class, middle class family unit area, they only have to make $14 an hour to rent a 1-bedroom unit for $800. So that is causing a lot of the triggers that we're seeing with that's come from job losses and things, and the stimulus monies that are helping landlords fix up their properties. That is causing our families to be exited out of some of their local residents because landlords are upgrading and trying to get higher amounts for rent. So what does doubled up look like? So they often are, when we think of homeless, you think of maybe the gentleman who is living under a bridge or the woman pushing a grocery cart down the street. That's not what we're looking at today. We're talking about the families that are living doubled up. They could be living either on a mattress such as this or on a couch. It's hard to figure out if they really are staying there, so we have to accept them at their word. It could be that they've been identified as doubled up because they've been evicted due to a fire or eviction or a condemned building. We also would be doing identification if they have infestations. We've had families have to leave their homes because of infestations with bed bugs or other things that the landlords are not staying up on and taking care of their properties and making it unfit for families to live. And then we also have our unaccompanied youth, who are those youth that are living with a non-custodial parent for any reason, such as parents, like I said, being incarcerated, running away, maybe due to coming out as an LGBTQ youth and not being wanted at home. So there's various reasons why we might have a child at any age being identified under this program. So the point of school is that we provide them a safe, stable place while they're going through the adults are going through some inconsistencies. I do not like to use the word homeless. So when I talk with our families, I will tell them while you're going through a difficult time in your life, while you're going through transition, that there is a law out there that will help your children have success at school while you're going through these things. And what happens with our children that are going through this insecurity with housing, it allows them those 8 hours in the day to feel normal, to feel a sense of belonging, to know that they have a predictable daily schedule. And we also are lucky enough that our district has 90% free and reduced lunch, but we have enough population that we can provide a free lunch to all of our students. So we do breakfast, lunch, and often supper in our after school programs if a child qualifies to attend. Living situations have been most of the time, just like the national average, around 75 to 78% of our families are living doubled up with another family and friend. So in their mind, they may not feel that they meet the qualification because they do have a roof over their head. But we often have found that when they're living doubled up with a family or friend, in most cases, 2 to 3 months is the most that I've seen it last, where they do not end up getting along. Because if you think about it, if you have a family living with you and they're using all of your resources, all of your money for electric and food, that if they're not getting a job in a manner that you think that is quick enough for your family, it could cause some tensions within the family, and then they have to be exited. So this law protects them while that goes on. If they have to move again, the child's academics will stay stable. We also have a lot of shelters in our area. We're very fortunate with that. And so with the shelters, I work with them and meet with them, if not weekly, every other week. And we have about 9% of our population in that living in shelters or transitional housing. We have about 12% that are living in either cars, campgrounds, or a trailer park. We have a trailer park within our district that has floorboards that have been boarded up, windows boarded up, and extension cords going from one trailer to the other. So we have deemed that this is something that we want to make sure that they have the ability to be identified in that trailer park. Not all trailer parks, of course, automatically qualify. You know, and my mom and dad lived in a trailer park in Florida for a while and had golf courts and things. We're not talking about those kind of trailer parks. We're talking about the ones that are just substandard housing. And then hotels and motels. We have seen a lot of our families, especially during the pandemic, having to stay in hotels and motels. And again, you know, they meet the qualification under this act. Our unaccompanied youth stay at Homeward Bound, and which is a shelter within our district, and they are able to stay there from the age of 14 to 17, and then we transition them into an ILP program if they stay committed. So these unaccompanied youth could be couch surfers. They could be staying in, like I said, the shelter. It could be due to a parent being incarcerated and staying with somebody else. And a lot of these are handled case by case, because depending on what their circumstances is, will determine whether or not how we handle those students, as far as either putting them in our traditional high school program or into our adult high school program, where they can work at a self-pace. And I'll explain more of that in a little bit. So it's estimated that 3 students per classroom are experiencing some form of housing instability. So last year, like I said, I ended our year with 781 students that were identified as homeless, and 89 of them are in foster care. And like I said, most of our percentages mirror what it would look like for our district compared to the national average or the state average of broken down by doubled up hotel, inadequate housing, or shelter. So when I talk to our educators, I like to remind them that sometimes we can identify a student as having a learning disability when it could be that they're distracted for other reasons. Oftentimes we have students that have told me that they've come to school and they don't have their book bag or their pencils or things because they came home yesterday from school only to find all their belongings on the street, or they were locked out and couldn't get their belongings. So I just would like to tell our families that, you know, we are here to help them. We're not here to judge them. And I let our teachers know to try to handle these in situations in a sensitive way, so that we can figure out if it's truly something that we need to do an evaluation on, or could it be that they're experiencing homelessness. When we think of homeless students, oftentimes our kids are the ones that have behavior issues or attendance issues, but that's not always the case. Sometimes they could be the valedictorian, or they could be leading in another way in the school. And this is one of my students who I'm very proud of. Destiny was won the Against All Odds Award for our district. She was living on her as an unaccompanied youth with an aunt, and she went on to graduate, and now she is in Berea attending college, where she is working on a degree to be a social worker, and now wants to open up her own housing program for unaccompanied youth, and that is her goal someday. So I'm very proud of this young lady. Stability, as we know, school stability is so important for many of our kids for many reasons, because they may be lacking stability for food at home, or, like I said, housing. But when they come to school, that is something that we can do, show a consistency about, so they know what time lunch is, they know what to expect from certain teachers, and it just makes them feel so much more secure and makes them feel more in control of their life. So for those 8 hours a day, I often have families tell me that their little ones, if I'm working with a family or if I'm working with my unaccompanied youth, they'll come and say, you know, I really am so happy that I'm able to be at school. Thank you for allowing me to stay in my school of origin, because it's the only thing I can count on. And so we just want to make sure that we are consistent when we're providing our information to our kiddos, especially our unaccompanied youth. We want to make sure that we're not making empty promises, because they've had a lot of empty promises in their lives. So we want to make sure that what we say is truthful and accurate, and that we can back up what we say. So when I talk about Homeward Bound, this isn't an actual picture of Homeward Bound shelter, but we do have 16 beds for students at this shelter, and that are ages 14 to 17 years old. And if they, like I said, recommit once they turn 18, we can move them into an individual living program where they'll have their own apartment, and they will do life skill trainings, working on budgets and just financial life skills on how to pay bills and get things in their name and build a credit. So that apartment will stay theirs as long as they are committed. If they exit out of the commitment from the state, we can keep them in that living quarters, because the apartment will be rented under their name. However, they will then need to be on their own. But we have really had a great success with the ILP program. A lot of our kids have stayed in that and stayed committed and worked with peer groups and individual one-on-one counseling to help them get to where they need to be. As you know, even though they're 18 and they're off, if those of you who have kids in college, they call home for this and that, or even when they get their first home, if you have children that age, they call and ask you how to do things. I remember my son bought his first house at 21, and he called me up and said, "You mean you have to pay your Duke Energy bill? You know, that's not included in your mortgage." So, you know, there's things like that that they'll be learning through these life skill trainings and how to manipulate those things. As well as we have staff that have been trained there. I have a lot of staff that I've worked with since I've taken on this position in 2008. So consistency among staff has been pretty great as well. So some of the services that we provide at this location is access to a computer lab at the shelter. So our district has purchased computers that are in a lab that are monitored by staff, and they're able to go up there and work on either job applications for our 18-year-olds who are looking for jobs. They can also do their schoolwork. And we have a tutor that comes in twice a week from our staff that's a certified special ed teacher that can break down lesson plans and work on any missing assignments. She works with our school staff to make sure that she stays up on any lesson plans that might need to be addressed and figures out ways to help the students be successful. We have a youth reading library there that we've established, and we collaborate with their goals when we meet weekly. I meet with the staff and we go over their goals, their successes, and any struggles that they might have that I can maybe remove barriers on. And when necessary, we will work with their cabinet worker, their DCBS worker that has been assigned to their case, to see what their placement goals are going to be like and how long they will be with us. Again, we try to keep it as stable as possible academically for them. Even if they move out of shelter, we would like them to stay with us if we can, so they can stay on track. We provide assistance with graduation. I usually provide about 10 of our students, and especially the ones at Homeward Bound. I try to take care of their caps and gowns and any other graduation expenses. If they can't be waived, I try to cover. When it comes to ACT testing, waivers and things of that nature. And they do create a memory book there from their experience, documenting their personal experiences as well as their field trips and any other things that they felt were memorable while they were at the shelter.
Hey, Lori.
Yeah.
This is Angela Austin, and I just want to say thank you for participating and doing this presentation. But I want to talk just a minute about those field trips you talked about. Miss Henson does such a fantastic job of doing those field trips in the summer. I want to be at Homeward Bound in the summer. She takes so many field trips and exposes the children to so many excellent experiences. And I have a feeling it's partially because of what you're able to do, but just wanted to give a shout out to Miss Henson about those fantastic field trips, both cultural and educational.
Yes, and I will be getting to that too, but that'll be coming up here. But she does an excellent job, and Angela is correct. We had some past tutors that have come from our staff over there, but Miss Henson has been an excellent fit, and the kids just really have, she's built a relationship with all of them. Some of them, of course, are more than others, depending on, some of our youth can be crusty at times. They've been exposed to so many different struggles in their lives. But yes, the array of exposure that they get through field trips is amazing. So as I was talking, when Angela came up to do her monitoring visit, we were actually met with the treatment team at that point and talked about some of these things that we do. So one of the things that I do is I make sure that they have access to online enrollment so that the staff at the shelter can immediately enroll them online, and then they can go up and do the rest of the paperwork. We have our traditional, Holmes Middle School and Holmes High School programs that they can go to. But also when we're talking about some of these high school youth who have been place to place and are needing a lot of credit recovery, we have two options for them. Depending on how much credits they have, we can place them at our adult high school program where they can go ahead and work at a self-paced program where you do some things online and some things through packets. And of course, we test them out of certain subjects if we know that we think that they have enough credits already. But we also had a youth who was staying at Homeward Bound for a while, and we end up doing a hybrid approach where she was struggling with two of her teachers, and it just seemed like it wasn't clicking for her, and they were core content classes. So we plucked her out of those classes, sent her over to our adult high school camp program, which is on campus where the high school is located. She would go over there, she would do her algebra and meet one-on-one instruction with one of our special ed teachers over there, and then would come back to school and finish out the classes that she could do and excel in. So she went over there for math and reading, and she was able to not only graduate, but she graduated in March compared to May because she was able to move it at self-paced, and with that additional assistance, we were able to get her in a position with her being, after she left the shelter, she became pregnant and she had her own little one that she had to care for. So this got her into college and into some other housing programs that we were able to move her into and get her successfully started. They also have a program called Zello. This Zello is a computer-based program to assist with a career path, because as you know, a lot of our kids that are staying in shelters or unaccompanied youth, they're not always four-year college students. So this program gives them the ability, and I'll talk about it, it involves our field trips. So, and we actually had a student that participated on the First Ladies Council for Foster Care Advocacy that was in this program. So here's Miss Henson. She was a Homeward Bound hero. And Denise on the right here is with Christina, who is my liaison for all the kids in shelter. And Denise is just an amazing woman who treats all these kiddos as if they were her own. And so we're very proud to have her on our team and have her work with this exceptional group of youth that we have at this shelter. So what some of the things she does is she finds different ways to learn. So whether she's taking them on field trips where they're learning how to do glass blowing as a trade, or use fabrication metals to do something in a manufacturing place. So they're not always traditional college visits. For instance, if we know a child is just not going to be college bound, but would need the access to the trades, we'll kind of get a feel for what they want to do. And then after we figure out what they need to do, we go ahead and see if we can work it out with a company. Instead of taking them to like Northern Kentucky University for a college visit, she'll take them to a manufacturing firm and let them go through and see what interests them, and if it's something that they would like to maybe do an internship and work towards. So she's just a wonderful lady, and she's very creative. So Denise has been with Covington for a long time. So like I said, she takes them to Reds games and glass blowing demonstrations, and she's tried ceramics, trampolines, and lots of times she does a lot of this with the kids herself. If she can participate and build that relationship with them, she uses that time, but she's very creative in what she exposes them to. And we're, like I said, so proud to have her on our team. This is Tessa with Miss Henson. Tessa was one of our students that was at Homeward Bound, who just really took it upon herself to just become very involved in advocating for foster youth. And during her advocating for that, she also expressed to Miss Henson that she thought she wanted to be a mortician. So we took her to, with Miss Henson was able to make arrangements for her to work at a funeral home and to do a visit there. And it was a good thing for her because she did find out that's not what she wants to do. However, she did continue, and I think has input still with foster care, advocating for foster care youth when she worked with with our First Lady when Governor Blevin was in our Congress down there, as our governor. And so this is her with Tessa too. And what we have found that when we're working with the shelter students, the biggest thing is communication. So by me attending those meetings weekly, or at least every other week, if I can't make it weekly, and we go over everything, like I said, I come prepared to discuss grades, attendance, behaviors, and they also come prepared to talk about their goals and placement and any housing concerns that they might have as far as like them following the rules of the house, and that I can kind of mirror so that school and shelter work together so that the student can be successful and graduate. So this is her with Tessa when Tessa graduated.
Ms. Knochelmann, we have a question.
Sure.
It is in chat. What are the requirements to recommend a student for Homeward Bound?
So what Homeward Bound has I think there's another shelter in the Louisville area, and if their ages 14 to 17, if they have been placed there by the cabinet, that's one thing, but I can send a student there for up to 21 days. So but the only problem that we are having is that lots of times, because the child is a minor, they have to call the parent and let the parent know that the child has come to their shelter and ask for assistance. They then try to work with the parent to get the parent to understand that, this could be a good respite for them until they can calm down and work it through the issues. And then of course they do, with any student that comes into their building, they do an intake. So my suggestion would be is to familiarize yourself with if there's any runaway shelters in your area, and if they have the pickup ability to get there to help pick up the child from school. But basically I just do a referral. I'll call them up and say, I have a youth that I'm meeting with who would like to come check it out. And I will tell you, if you have access to a shelter, whether it be an adult shelter, then you have a 18-year-old needing to go there, or whether it's a family and youth shelter where the parent might be going with, I try to take them to the shelter and do let them go through and tour before they make a decision, because sometimes they have this unrealistic viewpoint of what it would be like in shelter. And so Homeward Bound has got a great setup where it's for these unaccompanied youth, they really feel like a family. They used to do shared cooking. I know during COVID that kind of stopped, but they used to have shared cooking. They have game nights and things to make just the whole thing just more of a home atmosphere. So if you want, I can send you the phone number for Homeward Bound, which is our local one, and they can maybe talk through about how you can refer a child up there, because I do know we have gotten them from Henderson County and things before as well, so from downstate. Any other questions?
None other in chat right now.
Okay, so this just came from a student just recently that was just so grateful that they were allowed to stay there, and just appreciated the fact that what we were doing for them to get them off the streets. So, and lots of times these kids have never been to some of these field trips or never been to even a movie theater. So we try to see, and Miss Henson does too, we just try to make sure that if there's opportunities that we can present to the youth, such as going to see a play or experiencing just the arts in general, we try to take this opportunity to introduce those things to them, because they may never experience it outside of this opportunity, this short window of opportunity we have when they're in shelter and enrolled in our school district. And I'll open it up now for any questions. Before I do that, while I'm answering questions, I'm going to go ahead and share my contact information in case anybody wants to reach out to me. If you have any questions that you think would, I'm sorry for the typos. I just noticed my school email is incorrect. It's kyschools.us. Apologize for that. And if there's anybody who needs to reach me, just feel free to reach out to me individually, and I will do my best to assist you. I'm going to quit sharing unless you guys need this up for a few more minutes, or we can send it out to you when we get done here, but I'll open it up for questions. Now you got a face with a name. Does anyone have any questions, or does anybody have any scenarios that they would like to ask me about while we have some time here? Because I think sometimes the biggest thing about is we learn from sharing experiences or talking about scenarios within our own school districts and trying to help through that.
Lori, I wanted to ask about, and I was a couple minutes late, so I'm sorry for that. I wanted to ask you about how some of the coalition building that seems like it would be necessary for this work. I mean, I know Homeward Bound obviously is a big piece of that, and the school system is a big piece of that, but I'm sure there are other community partners as well. Like, what are some of the things that you all do that helps build those community contacts, and where are some places where you specifically found a need? I heard you talk about some of the field trips, so maybe some local businesses were part of that as well, but how have you all worked to build up some of those supports in the community?
Well, one of the main things is for those of you that have homeless coordinators in your district, my suggestion would be to have them reach out. We're in Northern Kentucky, we have we are a close-knit community. So we're really close to Newport, Campbell County school districts, Boone County, and Kenton County. So back in 2009, we were having some dispute with Kenton County School District because they had a new liaison at the time, and she wasn't aware fully of the laws and understanding everything. So we were running into some roadblocks. So what I did is we had a meeting, we called all the DPPs that were in the Northern Kentucky area, had a meeting with them, and we laid out some criteria. So we kind of came up with some guidelines that we were going to use the word McKinney-Vento as much as possible. So that's unified throughout. We came up with a brochure, which I could maybe try to pull up while we're talking here and share, but we pulled up a collaborative brochure. So we've named our group the Northern Kentucky Homeless Education Collaborative, and all of these districts, these 9 districts that participate in this collaborative, have the homeless laws on this brochure. It's a colored brochure in English and Spanish. And on the back of it, it has all of our information and our phone numbers. And so, for instance, one district just recently didn't have somebody assigned, so we put the DVP's name on there. So at least the families, where they're switching schools, they're getting the same message. And we do a soft handoff. So if I know I have a student that's not going to be with me any longer, and they're going to be enrolling in Kenton County or Erlanger School District, I reach out to that homeless coordinator and give them an FYI that this child is coming and might need some assistance, or even for families that are living doubled up, that the family has a contact. As far as field trips goes, we do have, with the ESSER funds that we received through ARP funding 1 and 2, we were able to help with some of that, with some of the field trips. We also have built, like you said, relationships within our community where Homeward Bound themselves or Denise has gone out on her own and advocated on behalf of the kids to say, hey, can we build this collaborative where we're going to refer a couple kids or do home visits, college visits in a sense, to your businesses to get kids interested and expose them to various things. So we do get some funding for that, or we use our Title I funding when we can to help support these field trips and our McKinney-Vento funding. Collaborative is the key, though. I'm just telling you, other school districts, you may not think that you need to link yourself to another school district because you're just working with your own kids. But I'm just going to tell you, if you have school districts that are within radius, like up here in Northern Kentucky, in Kentucky in general, we're surrounded by 7 states. And so there's a lot of movement back and forth. So the more you can collaborate with those districts around you, the better off you can be.
I'm kind of wondering if there's a systemic, because I applaud the efforts of individuals who go out and hustle and get those things for the students that we're serving. I'm wondering if there's any sort of systemic reach out. So you talked about your collaborative. I wonder if the collaborative then puts out something to the community that says, hey, we are serving a lot of students who don't have access to some of the opportunities that you could provide, or to some of the resources that you could provide. Like, is anybody doing that? I'm thinking like Frisk, you know how the people recognize when the Frisk reaches out, you know what I mean? So I'm kind of wondering if there's any sort of systemic work, or if you work with your local REAC to get the word out about that as well, because I could see a lot of overlap with like REAC and FAIR, with Regional Interagency Council and FAIR teams and that kind of thing too. I bet there's a lot of families in common.
What we do is we also go ahead and make sure that we break this down. There's 9 people in our collaborative. So we try to do as much as we can to break things down so we're not all attending the same things. But we do trainings with our local cabinet for health and family services. We go and present and get them involved so they know what services we have available for our students. And we have to do a lot of reminders with that because they do have a lot of turnover. So we've been talking about trying to do maybe quarterly touch base sessions with them so that as they're just refreshers. So we do that. We are also all are required to serve on a COC, and our COC, our Continuum of Care Commission. So it's through, it's for housing, for housing for families that are going through HUD housing, or but we meet with them to let them know that there's also this definition that's not HUD related, it's educationally related when it comes to homeless. So we educate those folks. We do try to also, we band it with our educational collaborative that's locally in our district, and we're a member of their council now. And so we have quarterly meetings at their collaborative, their co-op location, and that is open to all the districts that are involved in that collaborative that can join. So even if they're not involved in our little tight community of our homeless collaborative, they are districts like Pendleton County that can hop on board and hear what we're doing and be a part of that if they want to. And then we are doing in November, we're really proud to say we started to do this before COVID hit, but we were at a national conference where Richard Antoine White, he goes by the initials of RAW tuba because he was the first African-American tuba player to make it for a symphony in the symphony orchestra. He was homeless and on the street when he was 6, and he went ahead and did it. He's got a documentary and a book out, and it's called I'm Possible. And so our collaborative have reached that out to our curriculum folks, and we will be providing books to classrooms this year for them to read and hopefully attend our event. He's coming to speak. He's going to do a speaker series in November in the evening for adults to attend. And then on Friday, we're going to go to Northern Kentucky University for a college visit, kind of a sense, but we'll show the documentary and get the kids involved in hearing his story and listening to his documentary to see how successful he's become in that they can overcome their obstacles. So yes, we do a lot of community outreach. And then just recently this past weekend, and I haven't had access to it yet, but one of my collaboratives was on the Channel 9 News. We do that too. We do a lot of proclamations and, awareness in November for Homeless Awareness Month. Anything else, anyone? I know I still have a little more time. I would say that the biggest thing that you can do for the kids is just some of the things that I didn't touch base on is I do have a program that I inherited when I started and I continue to do with Neediest Kids of All. And Neediest Kids of All not only supports homeless kids, but they just at-risk kids as well. And so we do some vouchers so I can remove barriers to eyeglasses, if they need assistance with getting their laundry taken care of. If they're not in a shelter and they're on the street, I can go ahead and reach out to them and let kids get their laundry taken care of. I pay for this, they can get up to 4 loads in one day. They can't come and go, but it's just like up to 4 loads in one day while they're there. I do clothing vouchers if they need clothing to get to school. We do tank passes, metro passes to get them to school if we can't provide a yellow bus. And we just gas only cards, which for if they have a family friend that can get them. So we do whatever we can to remove barriers, including providing alarm clocks if needed, just to make sure that our kids are getting what they need. And as far as the fair team goes, when it comes to court involvement, we have our court liaison who attends those fair team meetings. And if they come up with anyone who is needing to be identified, they know that they have access to this. So on my district website, we have a referral form under my page where people can pull it up and do a referral for any student, even if they're a community partner who has met with someone through mentoring or whatever, and they find out that they're living on the streets, that they can refer a family to me as well. The only other thing I can tell you guys is I've created 2 resource booklets, one for the community that I share that gives it that the Cabinet for Health and Family Services use, as well as it's in all of our shelters. It's our local shelters and any other places that we think that families might frequently visit, as well as posters giving them access to what their rights are with this law. And then I also have a community resource guide for youth to help them, guide them through the FAFSA process, what they might need for college, what some colleges would require. And I have those brochures that I give out to our unaccompanied youth or our young adults that are in our school system that will be going on to college next year. I have a question. Does anybody on here have a homeless shelter or youth shelter that they are working with in their community? I know that as time presents itself, sometimes you come up with a question after this is over. So feel free to reach out to Katie, I guess, and then she will share that with me. And if it's something that can be shared with all the participants that we feel like if it's, needs it, fine. Otherwise, like I said, reach out to me directly and we'll go from there. I'll send you what I can help you with. Angie, did you have any updates or anything from when we met, Angela, that you would like, that maybe I didn't touch base on today?
No, actually, I think you did a fantastic job because when we met, I just had a very small inkling of what all your job entailed. And I'm so thankful that I got to participate in your session because it was just very eye-opening about the number of resources that we all have access to that we probably weren't aware of, just because, typically most of us are not in the inner workings of the central office in our local districts. So, all of this was very informative. And if I still had my school administrator hat on, I would definitely be contacting my local school board to see, where I could get more more involvement for my students. I was at Owensboro Day Treatment, and so we had some kids who were in group homes and such, and I did not have any idea that all of that was available. So that is one reason I asked Katie to reach out to you for this session, because it was really kind of selfish because I didn't know what I didn't know. And now you've shed a light on a lot of what resources are out there. And I wanted also everyone to understand what a great job you guys are doing up in Covington.
Thank you very much. I guess the biggest thing is for any of you that are out there that are educators that are not maybe working with your homeless liaison in your school district, you can pull up on your report card. There should be a link for open house, and you can pull up and see who in the district has been assigned to that homeless liaison position. And like I said, if they're not full-time, a homeless full-time coordinator, I know like Jefferson County has a full-time one, Fayette has one. But some of the smaller school districts, they're usually somebody that's in a Title I position or someone that's a DPP wearing multiple hats. So just find out who that person is. Ask them how to refer if you have a child or a student that's in this situation, what you can do to refer them to the program to make sure that they are getting that identification that is needed, so that we can, one, not only track them and help them throughout their education, because it'll follow them whether they're in your county still or switching schools, whether in their academic career process, that indicator is on there, whether they go switch schools from year to year. And just so you know too, for those of you that are not familiar with this, if you had a student that was in a situation last year and was identified under the McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Act, every school year we have to re-identify. So you just can't assume that liaison knows that next year the situation is the same. So if you built that relationship with that student and you find out that they're in the same situation, you want to make sure that you're reaching out to your homeless coordinator to let them know, hey, that Johnny's still in the same situation he was last year, and looks like that they still might need some assistance. And that, because there's no limit on homelessness. Depending on what their situation is, they can remain homeless for several years in a row, and the circumstances could change each year, but that indicator falls off at the end of every school year. So in June 30th, when KDE runs the reports, those indicators fall off and you have to turn around and re-identify. So just making you aware of that, and just maybe also just trying to get involved in your community to figure out where you can send your kiddos for help, build those relationships, because oftentimes if you can find somebody in the community who's willing to sponsor a field trip for, some of the kids to do something, or to, even if it's that you don't have access to help with clothing or laundry services, sometimes churches will step up and help. So just know that, those things, it takes time. And it takes a village, but we can get there and help those kids and give them what they need. Because ultimately, the biggest thing is we want them to graduate and have a diploma, because you can't even get in the service anymore with a GED. They have to have a diploma. So that's our goal.
Thank you so much, Lori. That is excellent information. You're a resource that not a lot of districts may have. So Covington's lucky to have you.
Thank you very much. And somebody mentioned that book, Evicted by Matthew Desmond. That is an awesome book. I recommend reading that if anybody wants to learn more about that whole process of housing insecurities and for our families. I'm sorry we ended early. I am a fast talker, and I hope I didn't talk too fast that nobody could keep up with. If there's anything any slides in the last few minutes that we have that anybody want to re-see or be able to maybe take a screenshot of, I'm willing to pull that back up again if anybody had something that they didn't get to quite see or wanted to see again.
And I've shared the link to that presentation as well.
Okay.
And Lori,
yes.
If I could just, I was want to put in a plug for Evicted in the chat, but just so people know, the thing, I'm a trained social worker. I've been working as a social worker for decades. And when I read that book, I really appreciated how it connected the systems of housing to experiencing homelessness, because there were things as a, white middle-class college educated woman that I did not fully appreciate even as a social worker. And so when you hear people say stuff like, well, just get a job or whatever, it ain't just that, you know what I mean? So that's one of the things that I appreciate about Matthew Desmond's book. And I'm not saying it's like the greatest book ever written, but it has a lot of actual examples from people and follows people over the course of a couple of years in their journey to sort of maintain housing, and just add some information that I did not directly have access to, even in my work as a social worker, like understanding how those systems sort of perpetuate the problem.
Well, and I used to present in Northern Kentucky University's Social Work 101 class, and the professor there really loved that one picture that I showed of a student in a seat with all these bubbles around their head as far as like being distracted. And it's true that a lot of our kids come to school with these distractions. And so it could be that they walk out the door, and that's what I try to tell you, my transportation department, that first encounter with that student on that bus that day could determine whether they're going to have a bad day in the classroom or a good day in the classroom, because they might have left the house where there's either domestic violence going on or just there wasn't food for them that morning. It could trigger a lot of different things. And so when they come to school, we need it to be a fresh day for them, and try to make every day a fresh day, and try to look at the child and remember, ask maybe why, instead of how did you get here? What's going on? Instead of just accusing them of just being having an attitude, because a lot of times those attitudes of it's something that's triggered them. So we want to have that trauma-informed lens when we're looking at our kiddos, because we could actually indirectly trigger them again. So we just have to be mindful of what could maybe set them off and get to know them better. And I also wanted to say too, like when you're looking at these housing insecurities and things, it's real easy for us, we're all educated, we've been to college, so our parents might have given them a lot, I call them tools in my tool belt. And my tools in my tool belt may look different than some of the parents that I work with or the kids I work with. And so we have to be mindful that just because a resource might look great or work great for us individually, that our youth, that resource may not look great. So educators, I tell our teachers, I'd rather you focus on doing what you know best, curriculum and teaching, and then give that handoff to the professional, whether it be a mental health counselor or a social worker in our district that is handling either our psychologists or social workers or those that are experts in those areas, because we want to make sure that we're not setting them up for additional failures, because they've been given a lot of empty promises, and we want to make sure that what we're giving them is factual and that it's going to play out. So we just got to be mindful of that as well. I don't know what you want to do at this point, because I know we still have some time left. I can answer questions and stay on here, or if you need to end the session, I'll leave that up to you all.
We have a few more minutes, so if anybody has a question, just pipe in, and if we don't hear anything, we'll let folks go and have a couple extra minutes to check on their kids or get a snack if they're at home.
And if anyone has any things that they're doing in their district that they're working on that they felt that is helpful, please share that now. I'd be happy. I feel like we're all can learn from each other. You know, I learn new things every day, hopefully from my co-workers. So hopefully if there's anything you want to share, I'd be happy to hear.
I don't want to take away from anybody else wanting to contribute, but there's a lot of overlap between the things you're talking about today, Lori, and the need for trauma-informed and resilience building practices to be an integrated part of the work that we do every day. It just needs to be the way that we do things. And so that's going to take into account, you know, that's going to cover you for the kids who, you know, had that incident before they left for school today, and also the kid who didn't have a place to sleep last night, like all of that stuff. If we can put that in systemically, we're going to be able to create an environment where kids have the best opportunity to learn every day.
And I see on here, not to call him out, but I see that we have some new teachers out here that were saying that this is helpful. And for those new teachers, if you need to know more information, there's a national site. It's called NAEHCY, NAEHCY. It stands for the National Association of Homeless Children and Youth. They do put on a conference every year. This year, you can attend it virtually or in person in San Diego. It's a great resource for those folks that are maybe wanting to learn more about how they can help their students that are experiencing homelessness. So that's, and they have on their NCHE website, I think it's nche.org. You can get publications and training materials and things that you can put posters in your classrooms if you want to educate your students on their rights. But again, I think the biggest thing is that, like I said, what we've reiterated, Diane's reiterated too, is that we want to make sure that we just keep this trauma-informed approach skills readily and available, because that's the only way we're going to come at children and meeting them on the same level instead of talking at them or down to them. Because that can be either turn them off, or you might make a difference that day and not even know it. I've had a couple students come back to me after they've graduated and gone on to college, and they still are struggling. They come back to their old school and their old counselors, or in my case, me, to see what I need help with this. And I always tell them, you know, reach out to me. If I can't help you, I'll try to find somebody who can. So keeping that door open for your students that are in these situations, because once they get into adulthood, you know, they've gone from this little bubble of having these educators wrapping their arms around them, taking them in as their own. I mean, gosh, my deceased husband was an administrator in a Catholic school system. And I come home sometimes and I used to say, we have extra bedrooms, we need to fill them, you know, and And we didn't because I knew there was a boundary there, but it's real easy to take them under your wings and get attached to these kiddos. But then at the same time, we have to remember, just because they graduated, that doesn't mean that they're done. They got it together. We got to carry them on. So just keeping those lines of communication open for some of those special students might be just the help they need to be successful in their college career too. And just check this out, guys, for anybody who's tied to other colleges. Northern Kentucky University is opening up this opportunity housing program. And so they're presenting, that's another thing, through Brighton Center. Brighton Center is a organization in Northern Kentucky that oversees homeward bound shelter. But they are opening up an opportunity for housing for youth that are unaccompanied. So this summer, it'll be even more prevalent next summer, but as kids are needing a place to stay over the summer because they graduated from high school and their parents have kicked them out of the house, this is an opportunity for them to get housing on campus, exposure to campus early, and also have people working with them as mentors to navigate housing resources on campus, food, academics, and getting them tutoring and getting them set up for success. So it's called Opportunity Housing. And if I can find that link, I'll share that with Katie at some point to get to you all as well.
That'd be great. All right. Thank you guys so much. That was a lot of really good information. Even when you thought we were done early, people still have more questions. So you've been a wonderful resource, and everybody has your contact information now. And you can always get in touch with me to contact Lori or any of the other presenters. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Lori. And I hope you guys will stick around until 1:30 for our end of the day session. We're going to have awards for our educators and students. And then a great closeout with Joel Caddy, who some of you may know. So we will see you all soon. Thank you, Lori.